You know what I love? A good old 3D platformer. It's definitely my favorite video game genre. I've had so many great memories playing them growing up, from Mario 64, Sunshine, Donkey Kong 64, and the countless 3D Sonic games. Unfortunately nowadays, 3D platformers are not as popular or as prevalent as they used to be back in the mid to late 90s or the early 2000s. I mean, there's still some notable exceptions of some good modern 3D platformers such as A Hat in Time, Yooka-Laylee, and Mario Odyssey, though there are others that are not so good. Nevertheless, I still miss the golden age of 3D platformers. I especially love the collect-a-thons, and no one has ever made one as good as Rare used to make them. This British video game company used to make some of my favorite video games of all time. Back when they worked with Nintendo, they made some smash hits such as the Donkey Kong Country series, Diddy Kong Racing, GoldenEye 64, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Perfect Dark, Killer Instinct, and Donkey Kong 64. They were at their prime during this time period, though the series that I've enjoyed the most was, of course, Banjo Kazooie. This game and its sequel Banjo Tooie helped define my childhood. I was amazed by the world building and the quality of these games. They'll always hold a special place in my heart. However, all this greatness did not last. Unfortunately, Rare got bought out by Microsoft in 2002, and with that, it took most of Rare's valuable IPs with them. I still haven't forgiven them for that. It didn't seem all that bad at first. They still made some great games such as Viva Pinata, Conquer Live and Reloaded, and they even currently have amazing success with their game Sea of Thieves. Although, during much of the 7th generation of gaming, it wasn't so pleasant. They have spent most of their time and resources creating the Xbox avatars and various Kinect games. Most of the original team during the Nintendo era left the company and started to make their own games like Yooka-Laylee. I still can't forget how heartbroken I was seeing how Banjo got the short end of the stick after all these years. Aside from a couple of great remasters of the first two games, all Banjo really had during the Microsoft acquisition was a heavily criticized title called Banjo Kazooie Nuts and Bolts in 2008, and a cameo in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing in 2010. Although I didn't hate Nuts and Bolts as much as other people did, the direction of this game had led me to become really disappointed with it. I missed the classic formula. I loved collecting stuff. This was not the Banjo that I loved as a kid. This franchise has remained dormant after all these years. We haven't had a Banjo game in over a decade. The only silver lining was his introduction to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. You couldn't believe the excitement I had when they got revealed during E3 2019. They were the characters that I wanted the most in Smash for the longest time. I really wish this series gets more love nowadays, and hope eventually we may get another game in the classic style in the future. But I'm not gonna get my hopes up. However, even after all these years, I still go back and play the first two games regularly. I wonder if they still age well in 2021. Let's find out by going over the first game that started my favorite collect-a-thon series, Banjo Kazooie. Before we dive into the game, let's go over some interesting history behind it and its development. This game wasn't originally supposed to be a 3D platformer. It wasn't even supposed to be on the Nintendo 64. It was actually supposed to be an RPG with a more fairy tale element for the Super Nintendo codenamed Project Dream. They wanted to use the graphical style of the original Donkey Kong Country series and try to make a game out of it. However, since the Super Nintendo was on its way out during this time, they shifted development to the Nintendo 64. Honestly, this would have been interesting. The 64 barely had any RPGs. They spent about 16 months working on it, and they changed the theme to a more pirate theme instead of a fairy tale one. You can see some remnants of this prototype through the final game, seeing the character Captain Black-Eye in the Banjo games. They changed the main character Edson during the development. They ended up using a bear instead. Though a rabbit was also considered as a character design as well. I wonder what this reminds me of. It's really interesting seeing how Banjo's design changed during development. After seeing early versions of Mario 64, they decided to shift the gameplay focus into a more 3D platforming direction. They scrapped everything that they worked on for Project Dream, and in about a week, they made the first recognizable level that Banjo fans know and love, Spiral Mountain. And with that, they made the game that we know and love today. Let's take a look at the final game. I'll be playing through the remastered versions on Xbox. These versions looks and runs so much better compared to the originals on N64. And it has a lot of quality of life improvements that makes the experience so much better. As we start the game, we have the choice of choosing between 3 save files. Look, they're even playing on a Game Boy. Whenever you choose a file, there's a small chance that a little gag can happen. The game starts with a witch named Gruntilda Winky Bunyan talking to her pot called Dingpot, asking who is the most prettiest creature of all. Gruntilda only talks in rhymes, so get used to that. However, as soon as Dingpot mentions that Tootie, Banjo's sister, is the prettiest girl of all, Grunty loses it and attempts to kidnap her in retaliation. Tootie's name was originally called Piccolo after the instrument she played during the intro. Though they changed her name in the final game. I don't know why though. Maybe because she shares the same name of a certain other character. Yes! As soon as she gets kidnapped by Gruntilda, Banjo and Kazooie awoke from their nap and meets a mole named Bottles. He serves as a tutorial during this segment and it's totally optional, which I appreciate. You'll learn most of your moves whenever you find his molehills throughout the world to explore. I really like how sassy Kazooie is during this exchange. She can really come across as rude or egotistical, but I like that about her. She has no chill. Banjo, on the other hand, balances her out. He's well-mannered and more easygoing and constantly apologizes for Kazooie's rudeness. He first appeared in Diddy Kong Racing actually, along with Conker himself. The two of them together makes a great team. They have great synergy and a love for adventure. As we explore through Spiral Mountain, we find plenty of things to do here. It's an excellent area to practice your beginning moveset. You have moves such as the claw swipe, roll, double jump, backflip, beak barging attack, and a rat-a-tat rap, which is great for defeating enemies. You can find these clear honeycombs scattered across the mountain. If you collect 6 of them, your health bar increases. You can get these regular honeycombs from defeating enemies to help refill your health. As we reach the top of Spiral Mountain, we head ourselves into Grunty's lair. As we head inside, we see Tootie being trapped in his contraption that is designed to steal her beauty in order to make Gruntilda look young and beautiful. I love how Gruntilda struggles to fit inside this machine. Now this Chad right here is Klungo, and he's Grunty's main henchman. He doesn't really have much of a purpose in this game though. He plays a much bigger role in the sequel. Honestly, I don't know what's stopping Grunty from just turning on the switch to the machine. As soon as Banjo and Kazooie enters the lair, she just smack talks them throughout the adventure instead of just activating the machine. She's such a troll. Though whenever you decide to save and quit or lose all your lives, you'll get this game over sequence where you would see what would happen if you fail. Damn, she's hot. Oh god, get that thing away from me! Anyway, once we set foot in here, we see our first Jiggy. These collectibles are used to help open up the worlds in this game. Think of them like the power stars in Mario 64. As we use our first Jiggy to solve this puzzle, we open up the gates to the first level of the game, Mumbo's Mountain. There are various collectibles that you'll see throughout these levels. First are these musical notes. They are used to open up these note doors. There are 100 of them in each level, and one change that I appreciate from this remastered version is that once you collect a note, you'll keep them for good. In the original 64 version, the game saves your best score depending on how many notes you've collected. Let's say if you collect around 78 notes and leave the level, or die, then you'll have 78 notes as your best note score and are going to have to collect them all over again. So it was recommended to get every note without dying. Normally this wouldn't be too bad, but there's a few levels, especially that one level later on, where it can be really easy to die. And it gets really tedious trying to get all the notes again. I mean, you don't have to get every note, but you'll get rewarded if you get almost all of them, and it just triggers me if I don't get them all. You also see these creatures called Jinjos scattered across the levels. Apparently named after one of the people working on this game. Probably because of their hair color. Ginger, Jinjo, get it? There are 5 of them in each world, and you'll get a Jiggy if you find them all. There are 10 Jiggies in each area, making 100 in total, and 2 clear honeycombs as well. You get some useful abilities from Bottles here. You can get a ground pound to help destroy objects or hit switches. You can use this to hit a Gruntilda switch that appears in each level, which helps spawn a Jiggy in Grunty's lair. There's also this technique called the Talon Trot. This is the most ideal way to move around. You can move quicker and travel through steep slopes as well. You can also have the ability to use eggs. You can shoot them from either your mouth or through your... behind. We now have our first encounter with Mumbo, who this mountain is named after. Mumbo Jumbo is a shaman who uses magic to help you with your adventure. Apparently he was Gruntilda's magical instructor at some point. However, she used dark magic to help transform his head into a skull. At first, Mumbo's design was inspired by the Jinjos, though he's not actually a Jinjo. His identity really is mysterious. You can use these collectibles called Mumbo tokens, which can be used as currency to help Mumbo get enough magic to use transformations. In this level, you turn into a termite. You can scale up really steep slopes. You can't really defend yourself, but at least the termite enemies won't attack you. They're just jealous of your shorts. You can leave the level with the transformation still active, however if you go too far, you'll revert back to normal. Using the notes you collected, you can unlock note doors so you can proceed further. You can then encounter these Dingpop warps that can help you fast travel to other areas in the lair to its corresponding color. This is also where we first see Grunty's sister Brentilda. She's actually a good person. She helps you in your adventure by giving you 3 disgusting yet helpful facts about her sister every time you encounter her. This doesn't really have much use now, but this is really helpful towards the end of the game. As soon as we solve this next puzzle, we then open the next level, Treasure Trove Cove. This is one of my favorite levels in the game. It's a really relaxing beach aesthetic, and I really enjoy exploring through it. When we find bottles, we can then learn the ability to use these shock spring pads in order to jump really high, and use these flight pads in order to fly around the level. Some notable points of interest here is this pirate ship called the Salty Hippo, owned by Captain Blubber. He strangely only talks in burps. He's a recurring character that you see a lot in later games. Though despite being a hippo, he can't really swim, so he needed help getting his treasure that is underneath his ship. There's also a sandcastle here that you can reach by draining the water by, dumping on Leaky. I'm not sure how that works, but okay. Whatever floats your salty hippo. This sandcastle area is really important later on when you have to type in passwords in the future, but we'll get to that later. One thing that I always get creeped out when I was younger was whenever I encountered this shark named Snacker. He always appears whenever you try to swim in the water here, and this creepy theme, which is similar to the Jaws theme, plays whenever he's nearby. It's difficult to get rid of him, but it's possible. Just give him a nice dump and he's gone. Snack on this bit. If you manage to have save data from Banjo Kazooie or Nuts and Bolts, then you have access to this island called Shark Food Island. Once you climb this mountain, you can obtain this pink mystery egg. This egg was supposed to be used for a scrap concept called Stop and Swap. I'll go over this later on in the video, but be on the lookout for any collectibles similar to this. Interestingly, this level was originally called Hammerhead Beach. It even had different music. Here, have a listen. After this level is finished, we gain access to the third level of the game, Clanker's Cavern. Now, I'm not really much of a fan of this one. This level involves a lot of swimming, and it's so easy to drown and die here if you're not careful. The main eye-catching thing around here is this giant mechanical shark thing called Clanker. When I first saw this thing, I was terrified. I mean, look at his face, it's so creepy. If you listen carefully, you can hear that his voice is pretty much Banjo's, but slowed down. Originally, he was supposed to be an organic creature, but they changed his design during development. Fortunately, he's harmless. He was used as Grunty's garbage disposal. This explains why this place looks like a mess. He requests you to free him from his chain so he can have some fresh air. You do that by going through this key underwater. This fish named Gloop here can give you bubbles so you can breathe underwater. This whole level revolves around Clanker. Once you free him, you need to use his body to gain access to various parts of the level. You can even go inside his body using his blowhole or entering through his teeth. Inside here, you can find a lot of death traps, and Bottle even has a molehill under here. How does that even work? He'll give you the ability to use golden feathers in order to gain invulnerability called Wonder Wing. Overall, this level isn't too bad, but it can be kinda tedious if you're not careful. It gets kinda boring, but the only really difficult part around here is making sure you don't die by drowning. As we traverse deeper into Gruntilda's lair, we hit our way to the fourth level, Bubble Gloop Swamp. Towards the beginning of the level, we can find Bottles teaching you how to perform this stilt stride using these wading boots. Whenever you wear this, you can traverse through dangerous terrain. I recommend going back to the lair to help break this block of ice after you receive these boots. This will be helpful in order to help uncover a secret later on. As we return back to the level, we can find many areas of interest. You can find these golden crocodiles named Croctus scattered across the level. You need to feed 5 of them with blue eggs. You can also find this giant turtle named Tanktop over here. You need to slam each of his cold and numb feet. Once you do, you can even enter inside his body and encounter another character named Tip-Tup and his choir. Not sure why they're doing a choir inside his body though. Now, Tip-Tup was first introduced in Diddy Kong Racing as well. He was also originally supposed to be a character from Project Dream too. Once you find Mumbo's hut in this level and gain enough Mumbo tokens, you can gain access to this game's second transformation, the Crocodile. With this transformation, you can travel through small passageways, travel through the swamp without getting hurt, and even bite things with your teeth. When you enter this giant crocodile-shaped hut, you can meet with a character called Mr. Vile. You can challenge him in a minigame to collect as much Yumblies and Grumblies as much as you can. If you manage to beat him 3 times, then you can get a Jiggy. This game gets harder the more you do it, but it gets easier if you try to get a certain power-up in the future, but it's not too bad. Remember that ice block that we broke back in Grunty's lair? Well, when you return back here as a crocodile, we can meet up with a character named Cheeto. No, not the tasty snack. Though I could really use some right about now. Anyway, he's Grunty's magic spellbook who grants you cheats. This is the first out of 3 times where you can encounter him. He can give you a password that can help you with your adventure. If you input this password in the sandcastle back in Treasure Trove Cove, you can double your egg inventory. This is really useful, so be sure to input this whenever you have the chance. After we finish completing Bubble Gloop Swamp, we can head our way to the next stage, Freezy Peak. This is a pretty cool level. As we enter here, we first meet this polar bear named Boggy laying down here. Apparently he ate something and he needs help coughing it up. So what's the logical thing to do? Obviously, we must use a sled and land on his belly. Who needs CPR? Once he's up, we can challenge him to some races, but we don't really have the ability to compete with him yet. Though we can find his children in his igloo. They're really upset about their missing gifts that their father was supposed to get them. Such a great father. Who needs to get gifts to their children when you can just waste your time doing some races? If you find Bottle's molehill in this world, you can learn the Beak Bomb. This move allows you to use a strong headbutt in midair. It's really hard to aim though, and if you're not careful, you can get hurt really easily. This move can be used to destroy these annoying enemies called Sir Slush, and pushing these buttons on this giant snowman. There's also this giant walrus named Waza who holds a Jiggy. Though he's terrified of Banjo, in order to receive it, we need a little help from Mumbo. If you collect enough Mumbo tokens, you can turn into a walrus yourself. You can travel through the freezing waters without getting hurt, and befriend Waza yourself. He gives you access to enter his cave. And since you're small enough, you can race Boggy as well. If you turn back to normal, you can enter Waza's cave and discover a nice surprise. There's this mysterious ice key that you can collect. This is also one of the mysterious stop and swap items. So what does this key unlock? Well, you're gonna have to wait until the sequel to use it. I hope this trend doesn't drag on. I really enjoy this level and all, but it just irritates me on how inconsistent it is compared to every other level in this game. In every other level, you can get every Jiggy in one go without backtracking. But this level requires you to come back with the power-up that you'll receive in a future level in order to get one Jiggy so you can race Boggy again. This is the only case where this happens. It just feels so weird and out of place. Why can't you just get every Jiggy in one go just like every other level? Oh well. Now onto Gobi's Valley. This is a really fun level, and I really love the music here. Over here we can find Bottles' final molehill. You'll learn your final move here called the Turbo Talon Trot. You'll have the ability to wear these turbo trainers so you can run really fast. With these, you can go back to Freezy Peak to get that final Jiggy where you can race Boggy for the second time. I always found Gobi's Valley sort of weird. I mean, look at some of these silly characters that you see. There's this weird tree named Trunker who is really dehydrated despite being in an oasis and surrounded by water. There's also this snake charmer named Ruby and his snake called Histup. Though I really love this little guy, he's so cute and derpy. And there's also this camel named Gobi. This guy can't really catch a break. When you first see him, he's all trapped, but then you constantly have to beak bust his hump in order to get what you need. He gets so irritated that he leaves this world. This isn't the last time you'll get to see him though. There's various pyramids that you can explore around here. In the center, you can activate switches in order to gain access to King Sandybutt's tomb. Yup, that's what it's called. I had so much trouble navigating this maze when I first tried it. It doesn't really help that you have time to do this. This level's also where you find the second mystery stop and swap egg. You can find it by the area where you get a clear honeycomb from Gobi, so be sure to grab it when you can. Once you get everything here, our next stop is Mad Monster Mansion. Before you enter here, I recommend you break down this gate first. This is necessary for progression later. Honestly, this is probably my favorite level in this game. I really love the creepy motif, and it's really fun to play through. There are actually 2 stop and swap eggs you can find at this level. One by the cellar inside this wine cask, and one on top of this toilet called Lago. There are ghosts everywhere in this level. The only way to get rid of them is using your Wonder Wing. Interestingly, the heads of these ghosts were actually the heads of the trolls back in Project Dream. There's so much memorable moments in this level. From following along Moat-san, the ghost hand, to play the piano, to these weird pots that you need to dump on.
Thank you.
Excuse me, what did you say? What these pots actually say is thank you. Though plenty of people, and even Nintendo, heard it as something more vulgar. The developers had to change this voice line several times before Nintendo could approve it. If you collect enough Mumbo tokens, you have the ability to transform into a pumpkin. When you turn into a pumpkin, you can go back to areas where you couldn't access before, like on the toilet, because that's how you get rid of pumpkins. You flush them down the toilet. This even disgusted Grunty, and that's saying something. Now go wash yourself, you filthy pumpkin. After you leave this level, go back to the area where you broke down the gate. You can find Mumbo's hut in the overworld, so you can hit this switch to help you proceed. Though once you do that, turn back into the pumpkin. If you go back even further, you can find a secret passageway, where you can find Cheeto the second time. This time he'll give you a password to double your red feathers. After you raise the water level, you can also gain access to the secret area where you can find Cheeto for the third and final time. And with this, you can double your golden feathers. Now it's time for this game's most infamous level, Rusty Bucket Bay. Back when I first played this on the 64, I hated it. All because of one single area, the engine room. You have to maneuver against these deadly fans and narrow platforms. It's so easy to die here. Keep in mind, if you died in the original 64 version, you had to collect every single note all over again. For this reason, I usually prefer doing this area first. There's no worse feeling than being so close to collecting every single note until you just mess up and collect them all over again. Thankfully, this was rectified in the Xbox version, since it saves every note you've collected. Interestingly, there was an underwater variation of this area's music in the game's data. Probably would have made this area much easier if there was water under here instead of a bottomless pit. We're inside a ship, how does that even make any sense? There are plenty of other annoying things in this level too, like this toxic water that you have to swim across. The pollution is so bad that you run out of breath twice as fast. You still even lose bubbles if you're swimming on top of the water. Fortunately, I'm pretty used to the layout of this level. I don't find it as hard nowadays, and I can finish it fairly quickly without dying. But I can never forget the horrible memories of trying to get everything in this level when I was younger. Overall, this level can be way too difficult for its own good, especially for first-time players. In Nuts and Bolts, there's even a signpost that says its difficulty was too hardcore for today's modern players. They knew what they were doing when they designed this level. I do enjoy these grumbling enemies though. They always say hi to you before they attack you. I find that pretty funny. There's also this cute dolphin named Snorkel. Poor thing is stuck underneath this anchor, but ouch, that looked like that would hurt. At least he's fine though. When you explore this ship, be sure to collect this red mystery egg as well in this cabin. I like the little neat references around here. You can see a portrait of Captain Black Eye from Dream, and you can also find one of Conker as well. Overall, almost nobody likes this level. This is also the only level without either Bottles or Mumbo in it. They even know how bad it was. Anyway, we make our way to the final level of the game, Click Clock Wood. Now this level is so much better. It's not as hard as the previous one, but it's definitely going to take the longest to complete. The gimmick for this level is that it's divided into 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The level design changes based on what season it is. I really love this concept. You can even see characters or events around you change or react based on the weather. For example, there's this beaver named Naughty. He can't get inside of his home because of this boulder blocking the way. We can't do anything about it now, but if you return back in the summer, you could break it since all the water evaporated. The slope to his home is too steep, so you need to return during the falls to swim your way into it. You can even visit him during the winter when he doesn't get many visitors. There's also this flower that you can grow throughout the seasons. We see our friend Gobi again, and we ground pounded him to help him plant some water. He probably hates us by now, but eventually the flower will be fully grown and die out during the winter as well. This squirrel named Nabnut has gotten so fat for eating so many nuts that we needed to help him nab some more during the fall in preparation for the winter. When the time comes, you can see him sleeping with his lady friend. I guess we're not the only one who nabbed his nuts. Now give me your egg! My favorite part is when we get to hatch this egg and help raise this eagle named Irie. We need to feed him some worms and see him grow as the months go by. They grow up so fast. We can also find Mumbo in here to gain access to our final transformation. We turn into a bee. We only have access to this in the spring. In the other seasons, Mumbo complains that it's too hot, or he's too busy raking in leaves and going out on vacation during the winter. As a bee, you can have unlimited flight. We can't really defend ourselves, but you're immune to these plants and able to befriend these bees. Rare said that this was the hardest level to design, and I can see why. This level has so much thought put into it, and I think it's one of the most creative and well-designed levels of the entire game. Now at this point, if you're a completionist, you should have every jiggy. Once you open this note door and step on this platform, we enter Grunty's game show? I love how this game doesn't take itself seriously. Grunty's Furnace Fun is a quiz show questioning you on your knowledge of this game. She can ask you general questions about the areas you've explored, the music or voices you've heard, or even questions about herself. This is where the information you've gathered from Brentilda comes in handy. All of the questions are randomly generated. It isn't too difficult if you paid attention and have good memory. I like how they referenced Cranky Kong, even though this is on an Xbox system. You also see some panels over here which requires you to complete some challenges from past minigames. A skull panel where you die instantly if you get the questions wrong, and a Joker panel which allows you to gain cards which can be used to skip a panel. I usually use these to skip over these deadly skull panels. Once you've reached the end of the board, Gruntilda escapes, you rescue Tootie, and the credits roll. And you all live happily ever after. Or do you? Apparently they forgot that Grunty escaped, so they managed to make their way back to prepare for the final battle. You can use the rest of the jiggies you've obtained to open this door to the final area. You're able to view that same laboratory where that machine was located. There are various note doors that you can see around here. You don't have to collect every note, but you're so close to the maximum, so you might as well. You can obtain these giant collectibles, which refills your blue eggs, red, and gold feathers. And you can find this secret puzzle to obtain red honeycombs, which doubles your max health. You have 2 extra Jiggies left over that has no use though. I don't know why this bothers me so much. Once you talk to Dingpot, he helps you by taking you to the top of the tower so you can start your final battle with Gruntilda. There are several phases of this fight. You have to avoid when she charges at you, attack her from a distance and in midair. This part in particular can be really difficult. You can easily fall off the edge if you're not careful. You also have to activate these Jinjo statues to hurt her, and finally unleash the Jinjonator. Once you've dealt the final hit, she falls off the edge and gets crushed by a boulder. You are victorious. Originally what was supposed to happen was that Gruntilda was supposed to hit you with a spell to turn you into a frog as a last-ditch effort. Tooty was supposed to go on a journey to help you turn back to normal, though this idea was scrapped. After Grunty was defeated, Banjo and friends decided to go relax on this beach. Dang, she's got some nice melons. After a little character parade, Mumbo shares some of his secret pictures if you manage to collect every Jiggy. He gives you hints on where to find those secret stop and swap items that you may have encountered during your journey. He tells you how much you can use these items in nuts and bolts. I like how he raves about how good this game is despite how much people hated it. During this first sequence, I found it pretty funny that they failed getting this first mystery egg and just gave up. In the original 64 version, you would have to type in some long complicated passwords at the sandcastle for these items to appear. So what use do these items have anyway? What's behind the mystery of stop and swap that we've waited countless years to know? Well, in Banjo Tooie, you can learn this Breagle Bash move. You probably know it as Banjo's forward smash in Smash Ultimate. You also gain the ability to use homing eggs, and use a Jinjo as a playable character in multiplayer. The rest of the eggs gives you a gamer pick and an Xbox theme. That's so underwhelming. The Ice Key on the other hand is used to access a Mega Globo, which can be used to transform Kazooie into a dragon. In the 64 version of Banjo Tooie, they couldn't get stop and swap to work properly because the player would have to swap the game cartridges within 1 second, which is impossible to pull off. To remedy this, you can only access 2 of the mystery eggs and the ice key in the sequel, in hidden areas. But what about nuts and bolts? Surely you get something good in that game. Well, you get vehicle parts. Yay. You get parts like a mole on a pole, fluffy dice, goldfish, beacon, disco ball, goggly eyes, and a British flag. How fun. All this trouble just for this? It's a shame, really. They wanted to do more with this back in the day. But they were limited by the hardware limitations of the Nintendo 64. They had to scrap this whole stop and swap idea. What a letdown. Anyway, after all this, the game ends with Grunty being stuck underneath this boulder while Klungo attempts to save her. The end. Even though we're done with the game, there's still some interesting information that I've learned while researching this game. First, there are a few scrapped levels that was originally planned to be in this game. One of them was called Fungus Forest. Now, people speculated that this level would have been in the Jigsaw puzzle chamber for Click Clock Wood, and it may have been reintroduced as Fungi Forest in Donkey Kong 64. Another level that was scrapped was Mount Fire Eyes, most likely believed to be a lava-themed world, though this concept was eventually used in the sequel in the level Hellfire Peaks. Interestingly, Gobi mentioned that he wanted to leave for the lava world, alluding to maybe that he was originally supposed to be there, but you ended up seeing him again in Hellfire Peaks. The entrance probably would have been in the lava chamber in Grunty's lair. Finally, they also made a test level based on a temple. They mostly used this as a way to practice Banjo's moveset, though you can see some interesting things here, such as this door, which was used in the intro of this game. So what else can you do after you finish this game? Not much, really. If you go back to your house and look at the photo of bottles, you can try to complete a series of puzzles. If you manage to complete them, then you can gain passwords to receive some funny cosmetic changes. You can make Banjo or Kazooie look comically small or large. And if you manage to complete all of Bottles' puzzles, you can even transform yourself into a washing machine. There's actually a small chance where Mumbo can accidentally turn you into a washing machine too. But you can actually play as one if you manage to complete all the puzzles. This idea is actually reused in Banjo Tooie, where you can actually transform into one through normal gameplay. Now, there are also other hidden cheats that you can input that can make the game so much easier. You would have to type in the word cheat first, and then type a series of passwords depending on the thing you want. You can achieve infinite eggs, feathers, collectibles, or even open worlds this way. However, if you use these in the 360 version, your progress will not be saved after you enter any of these codes. If you use more than 2 cheats that involve opening world or node doors or removing obstacles, you will receive a warning that your save file may be erased. And they're serious, be cautious if you decide to use this. Overall, I really love this game. I really miss these style of games, and the sequel improves on it even more in my opinion. Here's hoping one day that we'll continue to receive more games like this. The characters, music, and the world is so lovable. I love how they interact with one another. I wonder what it'd be like if we talked just like they do in real life. Yeah. Yeah,